Welcome back for another EVE Online video. This guide is going to be going over planetary interaction or planetary industry, whatever you want to call it. I will go over the basics of setting up the skills, the ships I use, and the just the way I set up planets for extraction and processing. If you've never had any experience with PI and you're looking to get into it, this video will be for you. And the goal is by the end of this video, you'll have a basic understanding and be able to set up and navigate the interface and set up everything to optimize accordingly, depending on what you're wanting to do. The first thing we're going to go over is going to be the skills associated with PI and their priority and what I recommend you going into first. Things like planetology and remote sensing, you don't need anything higher than 2 or 3 on that. Some of them are just prerequisites. The most important skill that you can get is Command Center Upgrades 5. This skill will increase the CPU and the power usage that you'll have available to you on the planets when you're setting up. So if you're wanting to set up your planets the way I'm going to show you in this video, I recommend getting this to 5. The interplanetary skill is going to allow you to unlock each subsequent planet for that character. Having it at 5, you'll have access to all 6 planets. So getting this to 5 as well, if you want to do a full array for that character, is also important. The Command Center Upgrade skill is by far the highest priority that you can do here, because you want to be able to set up your planets at maximum efficiency, which is required for this. You're going to need that CPU and that power grid upgrade at the maximum in order to set up things the most efficient way. Now we're just going to go over ships that you can use. You can use any hauler you want, as long as it has at least 1,000 cubic meters when you're setting up your command centers. I recommend, if you're starting off, getting the ethanol here. This is the Galante hauler. This is the PI specified or specialization ship. This ship will have a planetary commodities hold, as you can see here, which is scaled by skilling into the Galante hauler skill, which I recommend getting to 4. This will hold up to like 63,000 cubic meters. It also has a command center hold as well, which can hold up to 6 of these command centers. These command centers will weigh 1,000 cubic meters, so keep that in mind when you're carrying these out to null or wherever you're going to be setting up. And you want to be able to, these have to be in your hold in order to place them on the planets to start building. So right now, as you can see, I've got 5 in the hold here. I have a barren, plasma, lava, temperate, and ice. There are multiple different kinds, and depending on what kind of PI you're looking to extract and produce, then you'll have to figure out what you want as far as command centers go. As far as scouting planets go, if you go to the agency here and then you go to resource harvesting and then planetary industry, this is going to give you an the interface to look at the planets in the system and adjacent systems. Now, sometimes based on your skills, you might not be able to see things that are like 1 or 2 or 3 jumps out. It really depends, but I would only really worry about doing planetary industry inside the system. I don't try to gate ethanols or anything if I can help it. So I try to keep all of my my planetary interaction, my PI, into one system. Giving you some ideas about how this interface works. This is the current system we're in. These are all the planets that are available. You see the type, and then it has the system, and then the planet number, and then down here, this is a resource, and then this progress bar represents the density for that resource on that planet. So, for instance, on this lava planet, we have a 71% density for heavy metals, and then non-CS crystals, we have 60%. So, for instance, if we're going to be looking at this planet to produce toxic metals using heavy metals, we can go in here, we can right-click and go to View Planetary Industry, and this will actually bring you to the planet. You have to be undocked. You don't have to really be undocked to do this, though. You have to be undocked in order to place your command center, and then you also have to be undocked in order to access the customs office, which I'll talk a little bit more about customs office once I go through the basics of scanning. Up here in the top left, if you go over here to the scan tab, what I do is, yours is probably going to look something like this with this slider. What I try to do is I take these handles and I bring them down as much as I can, and I bring them to the right as much as I can. And then what you're going to do is you're going to select whatever raw resource that you're wanting to look at. So we're going to do heavy metals, and what we're looking for is the highest density would be like your white, right? So if we open this all the way up like it would be for default, you're going to see kind of like a heat map across the planet, and it goes from basically transparent all the way up to white. White would be your highest density. I don't really like looking at it in this way because it doesn't give me a really good indication of high density. So that's why I bring these handles all the way down, and then I bring them all the way to the right and just kind of like move it around so I can see a little bit of white. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically looking for a spot that I would like to place a command center. And once you find a spot that you want to, like this would be a good spot here, you can go back over to build and you can click on the lava command center and you can place it here. And then you'll hit submit and all of that. We'll go through an entire build for an extractor planet, probably on that lava planet, just to give you an idea of the entire setup. And I'll give you as much information as we go through it. But one of the things you want to make sure you check before you set up anything is you want to make sure that there's a customs office, and also you want to check the tax rate on that. So from this agency window, if you click on this lava planet here again, down here at the bottom it says customs office. You don't have to warp to it, but if you go down here and hit access customs office, another little window will pop up here. This is going to be your customs office window. You'll be using this to actually pull all of your resources off the planet when you send them to launch pads. So here you can see, yes, it has a customs office or else this wouldn't pop up. And then right here would be your tax rate. This is set at 0%, which is good. The percentage of the tax rate is going to be based on the value of the PI that you're trying to export. So if you're, if you see a customs office that has like 50% or more, it's going to be really expensive if you're exporting like, P3, which would be the, Tech 3 equivalent. And a little bit less if you're extracting like P1, which would be like T1 or Tech 1. Now, as far as efficiency goes with producing PI, I do not recommend making or extracting more than one type of P1 from a single planet. I try to make sure each planet is doing only one single extraction of a certain type of thing, because we can build planets that do nothing but produce P2 and P3 by importing stuff from our P1 extraction planets. The more you try to do on one planet, the efficiency and the production goes down really, really fast. And you'll see that when we start building the array, because you only have a certain amount of CPU and power for each planet. And it's better to actually, dedicate that to a max array or max extraction array and basic factories for that. That'll make a little bit more sense when we start going into actually building the planet itself. There's also if you go over here to the nanocom, if you go up here to industry, there's a planetary industry button here. You can right click on this and add shortcut to the nanocom. If you click this, it'll open up this little window here that you can kind of pin to your UI or whatever. Normally, if you don't have any planets set up, you're not going to see anything here. But I do have a planet set up that I did prior to recording this video so that I can demonstrate extracting and pulling things off of planets. But you don't necessarily have to go to the agency every time on your planet to access the customs office. If you have a planet here already set up, you can right click in this UI and you can go into the planetary view, which you can see the array set up. And then also you can right click and go to the customs office here as well. And as you can see here, I've already got some oxygen in my launch pad. But after after I show you how to set up planets, we'll demonstrate how to actually pull everything out of here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to set up on that lava planet that I showed you earlier. So we're going to go over here and we're going to go to the agency. I'm going to go back over here to this planet 1, this lava planet. What I normally do, this system I'm in right now doesn't have a dockable station in it. But what I normally do is I undock from a station. And then what I'll do is I'll navigate here and I'll place my command center and then hit submit. And then when I do that, I'll dock again, because then you can build the rest of your planet array by being docked. You don't have to necessarily be in space for that. Like I said earlier in the video, you have to be undocked in order to place your command center and also to access the customs office. So since we're just going to be in space the entire time in this video, I'm going to go here, I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to the view, planetary, industry. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up for heavy metals here, which is, heavy metals would be your P0 or the raw material you'll be extracting from the planet. And what this whole array is going to do is it's going to take heavy metals and we're going to extract it from the planet, and then we're going to convert it into toxic metals that we will then be able to export out. So go scan. We're gonna hit heavy metals. We've already kind of like, drilled down where we want to place. So I'm just gonna look around here a little bit. So this is a good area right here. And when we're gonna go over to build, we're gonna hit this command center right here, and we can just place this kind of anywhere. So now it's placed, and then we're gonna hit submit. Now at this point, you can, exit out, and you can actually dock, and then you can get back into this planet from uh, your UI. So like right here, you'll see that this planet now shows up on this UI. If you dock again, you can go over here and right click, and you can enter planetary industry and finish the build. But I'm just going to do it from in space. And keep in mind, if it's not working, you make sure you have that command center in your hold, or else it will not work. Next, the first thing we want to do is, and this is why the command center upgrade is very, very important, is we need to upgrade this command center to allow us to start building. So if you go to this button that says upgrade right here, open that up. We're going to go all the way to the max level to 5. And then we're going to hit upgrade, and then we're going to hit submit. That's going to allow us to start placing things at the highest efficiency possible. The lava planets are a little dark, so I'm going to try to build it over here so you can see it a little bit better. But this is how I'm going to be a demonstration on how I set up an extraction planet. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to get my launch pad set up, which you can just click here. Your command center does not have to be attached or even close to where your array is going to be. It doesn't need an active connection. So we just want it kind of in the vicinity of where we're going to be working. So we have our launch pad set up. The next thing I want to do is I want to put in a storage facility right next to it. And then the next thing we want to put in is going to be our extractor control unit. I want this extractor control unit to be right next to this storage unit, because we want a single link going from the extractor to the storage. So we only have to upgrade one link. And to give you kind of an idea about how links work, I'm just going to place a factory over here. These links, the longer this link is, the more CPU it's going to use. That's why we try to keep all of these buildings as close together as possible. So as you can see here, if I link this, it's going to use 39 TF CPU. But if I bring this link down, you can see that that CPU and that power usage is going to go down. So we definitely don't want to like spread things out too much. And so the way I'm going to show you to do this is to group them all as close together as possible. The first thing we're going to do here is we're going to actually create links. We're going to go link from the extractor over to this storage unit. And then I'm going to click the storage unit, and I'm going to link it to the launch pad. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hit submit here. And we're going to set up the extractor and get it running, and then we'll put in all the factories. Now, I know that since we're only doing one type of P1, this link in between the extractor and the storage unit is going to have to be upgraded. Sometimes they're a little hard to click. You can zoom in if you need to, but if you're having a hard time clicking this link in between, you can actually click on the extractor. You can go to this links button, and you can double click here, and that'll select it. We want to upgrade this at least once, because we're going to be pushing a lot of raw material through this link into storage. Now, as you can see, the extractor unit has a red ring around it. That means that it doesn't have any active extraction program running. So we're going to click on this extractor, and we're going to go to this far left button that says Install Extraction Program. Once you click that, it's going to open up this other window here. And we know we're going off of heavy metals. So we're going to go over here to the Select Resources. We're going to hit Heavy Metals. I usually run my extractors for a day because I pick them up. I usually just reset all my extractors every single day, and my goal is to actually produce 1 million raw for every cycle. So just to give you kind of an idea of like the range of what goes on here, I'm gonna select it to 1 day, and then over here in the far left you're gonna hit each one of these 10 heads. We're gonna want to use every single head. These are extractor heads. And this is going to allow us to extract the most we can. Now, you can then drag these heads over and place them over the white areas, which is why we set up our array close to this area. So we're just going to kind of just drag all these, over and just kind of place them like so. And as you can see here, now that we have them all set, you can see that our total amount of raw down here is going to be 1.4 million for 24 hours. Now this can go all the way down to like 1 hour, which will give us 114,000 raw, and it can go all the way up to 14 days. Now keep in mind that the longer your duration, the larger your head radius is, and you don't ever want any of your heads to actually overlap with each other, or you'll get this negative percentage to efficiency on each head. Now, my recommendation is if you're trying to set up PI and you're only going to check it, very rarely, if you're only going to check it every 14 days, then you can set this up for 14 days. But it doesn't mean you're actually going to get, if like we set it up for a day, we can get like 1,000,000 raw. But if we set it for 14 days, we're not going to get 14 million raw. It doesn't scale like that. So as you can see here is, even though these are overlapped, we're going to spread these out a little bit so you can see. So I've spread these all out, and I've it set to 14 days, and it's only going to produce 4 million. Whereas if I go all the way down to just a single day, and I bring them all back in, since I'm already logging in to get like daily rewards and things like that, it's very easy just to get in here and reset these extractor heads every 24 hours. And I'm always just looking for that total produced. You want to keep that at around 1,000,000. And also, the longer your program duration, in the individual subcycles will be smaller as well. So at a day, your individual cycle is going to be, your subcycle is going to be like 15 minutes. What that means is that if you're set to a program, the total program duration is set to a day. That means every 15 minutes, you're going to get raw resources pushed to your storage so that your factories can use them. Whereas if you set your program duration to 14 days, you're only going to get raw resources like every 4 hours. So if you're really trying to produce PI to do, construction or do any sort of manufacturing, you really want a lot of PI production per day, you definitely want to be around 24-hour mark, which is what I'll recommend. All right, we have all of our heads set up into the white areas here. And so the next thing you would do, you just check, make sure you have all your heads, you have no negative efficiency, and you've got everything selected correctly, and you just hit start extraction. So now that program is running, but we still have to, you hit submit on that as well. But you can see there's still a red ring around this extractor, which means that it's not routed. What we have to do now is we have to actually route that heavy metals to the storage, so the extractor has somewhere to put it when the cycles are complete. So we want to go to this product button here. This is going to drop down and it's going to show you the heavy metals that are going to be coming in from the extractor. And so we want to hit create route, and then we want to hover over the storage unit, and we want to click it. You'll see it will be here. Destination would be storage facility, and hit create route, and then hit submit. So now that extractor is set up completely. And as you can see, that link, if you hover over it, that 47.9 that you see is the capacity of the link we're using, which if we didn't upgrade it, it would be red and it wouldn't let us route it to the storage. So make sure that the link running between your extractor and your storage is upgraded at least once. Now, whenever these cycles end, whenever the 24-hour passes, the extractor will stop, and you'll get an indication on your PI UI here. And so basically, if you're set up to run your cycles on auto extraction planets every 24 hours, you'll want to come back in and you'll want to reset them. And to do that is very simple. You'll just go into your UI here, you'll go to the planet and get to this view. If you click on the extractor, you can go back to the install program here, and this will show it not running. But you can also come in here when there's like an hour left and just go and force reinstall it as well. And as you can see, if we go back in here, we can actually see that 15-minute cycle timer. So once that 15 minutes passes, we'll actually have raw in here. But if you come in here and you want to reset it, you can just hit stop. And then you can hit start again. And then hit submit. And it'll start it over. It'll start that whole 24-hour process over. Now, one thing, before we move into doing the factories, the one thing I will cover is the density for the raw material that you're going after will change depending on how aggressive you're mining in that area. So the shorter your program duration, i.e. the more often you're pulling stuff out of the ground and sending it to storage, will start to tick away at the density here. And it'll start to move around. So after about 4 days or so, this probably won't be white anymore, But what I do is whenever I come in and reset, like we just did, I will if I stop it or if it needs to be restarted again, I'll just move these heads around until that total number of raw is back to around 1,000,000. Doesn't necessarily have to be in white. You can still get a total 1,000,000 raw from being in the green or, even close to like the transparency. The goal, because you don't want to have to move your array too much. And also, if you kind of like, blitz a lot of extraction, let's say you go for like a week or two and then there's like really no density for that material around your array, you can actually just kind of like take a break from running extractions and all that density will slowly kind of build back up, which hasn't really been the case for me because since I'm only running 24-hour cycles and I'm only going after about 1,000,000 raw per cycle, then I really don't ever have. It might dip down to like 100,000 raw per cycle at times, but for the most part, I don't have to actually uproot this entire array and move it to the other side of the planet, which can be very time consuming. And that's the reason why we kind of keep this. We keep our CPU and our power usage down as much as we can, because in case we have to move our extracting unit. Hopefully that's not too confusing. There's a lot of things going on here, a lot of numbers, and you'll see after you start running the extraction planet for a few days, you'll start seeing like the density and stuff change. And then whenever you reset these cycles, just move these. You don't have to move anything in your array up here. You can just move these heads maybe to a different area and then hit start and just try to go for that 1,000,000 per cycle. So the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to set up the factories to use this raw and start converting it into toxic metal. So what I do here is there's a basic industry facility. This will produce tier 1 or P1 product. The advanced will take T1 or P1 and convert it into P2 or P3, which we won't use on this planet. Those are dedicated more towards process planets, which I'll go over as well. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to just drop a bunch of basic factories here. And what I'd normally do is I do it in this configuration almost every time. I go 3 down. I actually go 4 all the way across here. And then I'll put 4 more up here. I usually keep it at 8 so I can have a little bit of CPU and power overhead in case I need it. And then the way I do these links is I'll start over here on this factory and I'll click and I'll just do like a C formation and just connect them in this way. And I'll go from this factory down to storage down to the one at the bottom here, and do the same thing over here. Because these are already linked because we set those up first. And I'll hit submit. And so now those factories are set up. Each of these factories now needs 2 things. It needs to know what it's actually going to produce, and then it also needs to be fed the raw materials, or it needs to have a route created to it. So we're going to click on here, and we are generating raw or heavy metals. And so what that's going to be is going to be toxic metals. We're going to go down here and select toxic on install. When we hit install, we're now going to click on the launch pad right here. And you'll see right here, destination, launch pad, and we'll hit create. What this will do is when it finishes creating toxic metals, it'll stick it into the launch pad, which is going to be where you're going to be able to extract it off the planet. The next thing you want to do is you want to click on your storage unit. You want to hit this route button here. And I sort this by type, where it shows incoming is at the very top. Just makes it a little bit easier because as you add more transitioning routes, this list is going to get a lot longer. So I'm going to hit this toxic metals, which is the incoming. This is what's coming from the extractor. And we're hit create route. And now we're going to click on that factory. And you'll see that the destination is basic factory here. Hit create route. Now if we hit submit on that, you'll see now this factory is ready to go. There's no red rings around it. And as you can see here, it's just waiting on input, which is just literally waiting on this raw cycle to finish. And then all you have to do to finish this planet off is just set up every other factory the same way. The way I normally do this is I just go through and actually just set up the program plan for toxic metal all the way across. This allows me to make sure I don't miss certain things. So what I'll do is I'll just keep going through all of these. And then once I'm done, we'll go through and build the import routes. It can get a little confusing sometimes. We have one more here, toxic metal. So all these are going to output to this launch pad here. I'm going to go ahead and submit. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to our storage unit, go to routes. And we're going to do the same thing we did on the first one. And we're just going to make sure we build a route for each factory. And I usually just hit submit once we're done with all of it. Make sure I get all these red rings out of the way. And we got one more. Create route. And then click on that one. And now submit. And we're good to go. And as you can see here, we don't have a warning on our UI over here anymore. So we know this one's good to go. And so now we're literally just waiting for the raw material to produce. And it'll go to storage. And then all these factories will pull from storage to build the toxic metals, which then they will push to the launch pad. Once you're done here, you can actually just right click and go to exit planetary industry. And then if you open up the agency again afterwards, you'll see all of your established planets will be they'll be indicated here with a colony. Now I set up a planet prior to this, and as you can see here on this first one, we can see that our storage has 140 oxygen in it. And this usually updates whenever the session updates, so you can also go into the planet in order to update it as well. But I'm going to show you how to actually pull this this stuff out of planets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on here. I'm going to go to customs office. I'm going to go and access the customs office, which it'll show here. As you can see, I have oxygen over here. And then what you can do, actually, you can right click and go to customs office, and you can get warp 0 to the customs office, not the planet.
Drive active.
Now, some other things you can do here, you have 10,000 cubic meters of storage in the launch pad, and then you also have 35,000 cubic meters in the customs office as well. And so if you don't necessarily want to go out and empty out your launch pad every time, because once your launch pad actually fills up, then the factories will stop. They won't be able to put any more into the launch pad. So what you can do is if you undock and access the customs office, you can just bring these over into your customs office storage and hit transfer. And then whenever this fills up, you can actually just come out and grab it all here. This is all private. Everything that's in the orbital customs office storage is unique to you. So if somebody goes to this exact customs office, to the exact planet, and they open up the customs office, they won't see your material. So as you can see here, we just made it to the customs office here. We have everything over here. We're going to go ahead and grab this other too, because that just outputted some. And so right here, we can just drag this to our commodities hold. And there we go. You'll pay that tax rate whenever you bring it from the launch pad over to your storage here. And so now you can see we have it in our storage. And that's how you pick up. Very simple. And then also if you go over to this one we just set up, we can access the custom office there as well. And you can see our launch pad is selected here. There's nothing in here yet. You'll do the same thing to, pull it out as well. And it works the other way too. If you're going to import like P1 into like a production planet, then whenever you when you warp over here to the customs office and you open up this customs office window, you can drag P1 over here, and then you can drag it over into a launch pad, which I'll show you how that kind of would work. But then you just transfer, and then how you have the processing plant set up, once you transfer to that launch pad, the factories will start using that resource. So instead of doing that, we're going to keep this here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I set up a process planet. And this is going to be a different type of planet because we're not going to be extracting anything at all. We're essentially just going to have a nothing but factories. And the way it'll work is we'll basically be just plugging in P1, and then it'll process everything and spit it out to another launch pad. So what we'll do is we'll go in here. We're going to just use this barren planet here. We're going to go into the planetary industry. It doesn't matter where we put our command center because we're not actually extracting anything, so we don't have to scan or do anything crazy like that. So really all we're going to do is we're just going to kind of like go in here and put our barren command center down. And we're going to hit submit. And then the first thing we're going to do is, like we did before, we're going to upgrade this all the way to level 5 and then do it that way. And then you can dock again and then finish the build, but I'm just going to go straight into how I build the process planets. I'm going to come down here a little bit. We don't really need this command center in the way of what we're doing. I don't run storage facilities on process planets. Instead, I do a double launch pad setup. And what this is going to do is basically one launch pad is going to be dedicated to our input, and then one launch pad is going to be dedicated to our output. Because what we want to do is we want to go for 24 advanced factories here. And it really depends on what you're doing. If you're taking like P2 all the way to like, or you're taking P1 to like P2, then, you know, you're mostly always going to have advanced factories on these planets, because we're doing all of our P1 or our plan PI T1 on the extraction planet. And so the reason we're not running storage is because we want to make sure that we get the maximum amount of facilities on this planet, which is around 24. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start placing these down, and like just like before, we're going to keep them as close as possible. Because if you go out too far, then the route can be too long and it actually won't let you put it down. So we want to keep everything as close as possible. I usually do it around like that. So it'd be like 8, that's 10. And then I'll put 3 on each side. That'd be 13. And then we put 3 on the other side. That'd be 16. And then we can go 17, 18, 19, 20. And then we'll put 4 more down here for 24. You see, we're really close on power now, and our CPU is still pretty good. So now we need to actually link all these. The way I link as well is going to be, I'm going to go from like this. I'm going to work these corners first. You don't want to have any unused links, because it's going to just use CPU. So I'm going to start here in this corner. I'm just going to do like this little 90 degree, just to link those 3. And do the same thing on this corner. And then we're going to do the same one down here. The next thing I want to do is I'm just going to take the link all the way through the center. Make sure all those are connected, just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here. I'm going to connect these down to the launch pad. Connect these down. Then do the same thing on this side. And as you can see here, now we need to connect these, the corners into the launch pad as well. So I'm going to do like a corner, kind of like that. And now everything is essentially connected. And then we can hit submit. And now setting up here is, you don't really want to set up your process planet until after you've got a good amount of PI. Because in order to actually route this without a storage unit, without an extractor, you're going to need a lot of PI in your launch pad, your input launch pad, because it's going to use an absolute value instead of a theoretical value like our extractor does. So we don't have anything set up in here, where you can set up the programs. So you just go in here like you did with your extractor planet. You pick whatever you're trying to put together. So we'll say consumer electronics is what we're going after for this planet. You'll select that, and you want to make sure you have an idea of what your ID here is. So you want to make sure you're pointing the advanced factories to your output, and that's going to be based on the window here. So if you see this launch pad is its code basically is UC TAC HYS. So we know that's going to be our output. If you exit here, and then what we'll do is we'll go over here to this customs office. You open it up. You're going to see a drop-down menu with 2. So this UC TAC H, we know that's our output. And so that's where we want all of our output to go. You want to make sure that when you're setting up your advanced factories, you're making sure you're doing it carefully, and you're setting all those outputs to the same launch pad, or things will start to get crossed. Let's go back into that. We'll finish setting this up. We won't be able to set it up completely, because we won't be able to do input routes because we don't have any P1 in there. But as you can see, we'll go here, and we'll go to consumer electronics, and we're going to point it to the launch pad on the right. You can just confirm right here that's the right code and hit create route. And you can essentially just keep doing this for all 24, making sure you have the right one selected. These are really tedious to put together, but what's nice about the process planet is you're not having to worry about extraction or anything. And sometimes I'll change my extractor planet or my production planet based on whatever I'm doing, right? So if I want to just create, consumer electronics on this for a while, for like a week, I'll go and set them all up for that. And then when I'm done with consumer electronics, I want to do something like mechanical parts, I can change it over as well. Now, whenever you're setting up input routes for all these, you'll do the same thing like you would do on the storage for the extractor planet. You would select your input launchpad here, and then you're going to go over here to storage, which is where all of your P1 would be. And you'd be selecting the line item here, and then create a route and then point it towards your factory. That's the reason why you want a lot of P1 to start to set this all up initially, because every time that you link or make a route, that factory is immediately going to pull from that total. So if you don't have enough product in here to cover the initial cycle on all 24, you're going to end up having to like come in here and just like, you'd never be able to have enough to actually finish all the routes. So essentially what you can do is you can go in here and you can do the math and everything like that. So on this, we know it's going to take 40 of each. So if you actually take, 40 toxic metals times 24, you make sure you have that number in your inputs, and that will allow you to set up every route. And in order to do it with the exact amount, that 40 times 24, if you have exactly that a number of P1 in there, you want to actually set up all these routes before you hit submit. Because once you hit submit, the factories are already set up for their routes. They're going to pull from that number. You'll when you start setting it up, you'll kind of see what I mean. But just go ahead and stockpile your P1 till you have more than enough to cover all the routes needed, and then just set them all up at once. And this, you only have to do this once. In the future, you'll be able to just drop your P1 into the input, and everything will automatically get routed out. That's how I set up process planets in that configuration there. As you can see, we're right on the line for power, which is where you want to be. If 24 is, I think, the maximum you can put on a planet. And you could do other configurations here as well. You can actually have 12 running. You can actually do more than one, P2, or more than, so you could have 12 doing one type of P2 and 12 doing another. Or you can have like 6 doing one type of P2 and 6 doing another type of P2, and then 12 doing P3 that's fed from those. It's all about just getting used to how the output route and the input route works. And since we're using these two launch pads, utilizing them that way. So for instance, if we're going to go over here and we're going to, dump into this, you'd warp over to the customs office for this planet, and you'd access that customs office, and the TC TAC H YS, that would be our input. So you go over here and you drag your commodities over here and then transfer them into this launch pad. And then if you're going to pick up that P2 that it had created or had converted, you just change the launch pad and drop down and extract that way. Very complicated. Once you get used to running PI, it gets a little bit easier to set up. You'll be a lot faster at it. The trick is to just try not to do more than one thing on a planet, or else the production is just going to be really, really low. And as you can see here, this storage will also show that we have the raw in our storage as well, because that storage indicator on that UI will show basically what's ever in your storage and what is ever in your launch pad. So you'll be able to quickly see kind of what needs to be picked up and what needs to be moved over, or if your production plan is not running or anything like that. And this is going to show an error on the UI as long as the routes are not set up. Like I said, you're going to have to basically produce a lot of P1 and load up this launch pad for import, and then create all those routes. Then all that stuff will start running. You don't have to reset it up every time. Once you set up the routes the first time, they'll stay. Then all you'll have to do is actually just come in here and just drop P1 into that launch pad, and those factories will automatically start producing whatever you have it configured for. Hopefully hopefully I explained things well enough in this video. You get kind of in the weeds on it. The more you scale out for PI, the more alts you add to it, the more time consuming it can get. But it's also depending on whatever you're trying to do. Normally I'm creating things like nanite repair paste or fuel blocks, and so you're almost always going to need more than 6 planets. If you want to do something more simple, then you can do like robotics, right? Like for a robotics setup, you could do one planet that's making you're gonna have like 4 planets basically that's going to be doing shell structures, precious metals, reactive metals, and toxic metals. And then you'd have a process planet that would create the consumer electronics and the mechanical parts. And then you'd have another planet that would take all that P2 and convert it into robotics, which is a good beginner setup. And you can set all that up based on whatever I've shown you. For instance, a consumer electronics and mechanical parts planet would be basically just 12 of these would be set up for mechanical parts, 12 would be set up for consumer electronics, and they would all push to this output launch pad. And then you'd make another array like this on another planet where all 24 are all set to robotics. And then you'd basically just dump all of your consumer and your mechanical parts into this. And then all of these would actually pull from that and create robotics and push it to your output. Just going to take a little bit of experimenting if you're, new to it. But hopefully I explained things as best that I could. I don't want this video to run too long. It's already like 40 minutes long. There's a lot going into it. This is just the basics. What I'll probably do is I'll probably do a follow-up video and talking about more advanced setups later on and give you an idea of, what it's like to kind of manage multiple characters running 6 planets apiece. But I figured for a basic video, this is a pretty good start if you're trying to get into PI. Anyway, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.